Welcome to Sex with Rebecca, a show geared towards relationships and sexuality that'll help you enjoy your relationships more than you ever thought possible. Send us your difficult questions and we'll bring you expert answers unlike anywhere else. Have you ever felt that hard as either one of you tries, neither one of you is feeling loved, or for that matter, feeling sexually satisfied? It could be because you're not speaking each other's love and sex languages. It would certainly explain why I've been getting a lot of emails from frustrated individuals who've actually considering packing it in. Well, don't you dare make any hasty decisions until you learn how you could be missing each other's heartfelt gestures because they're just speaking a different language. Joining me for that critical discussion is registered psychotherapist and marriage counselor, Kevin Coupland. Welcome, Kevin. We're so thrilled to have you joining us tonight to teach couples to love the right way. Now, Kevin, we've both seen couples where each party is feeling unloved by the other, and they just can't fathom why. So let's just get into talking about love languages, talking about the 5 love languages. What's the first one?
Well, the first one is acts of service, and that's for people that like to do things and they show their appreciation and their love for their partner by doing things, maybe fixing the plumbing, you know, or bringing them, not necessarily bringing them something, but doing something to show them that they are important.
And they also perceive love in that way. If you do something for me, I feel loved. And if you don't do anything for me, then I don't feel loved, which is a good segue into the next one, which is words of affirmation. So you can be saying all sorts of stuff to this person, but if you're not doing it, they're not going to feel it. And of course, if words of affirmation is someone's language, they need to hear it to believe it. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and most likely you're going to be saying it too. If it is your language, you're going to be saying it a lot. You're going to be affirming your partner, and very encouraging, and most likely that's something that you want to receive in return.
Absolutely. And the next one?
And the next one would be quality time, and that's just spending time. It could be walking, going for a walk, walking the dog. It could be going for a drive. Whatever it is, it's being with that other person.
Just specifically carving out time with that person.
Carving out time, yes. Making themselves a priority, their time a priority.
I like that.
Yeah.
Next one is touch.
Oh, yeah.
And being a sex therapist, I see a lot of people where they're having issues in that area. The interesting thing is, and touch doesn't have to be sex. It can be hugging, cuddling, holding, spooning, anything. But for a person whose primary language is touch, if touch isn't happening, they actually feel unloved. So it's not just that my partner isn't attracted to me, it's I don't feel loved.
Yeah, they feel love-starved, don't they?
They feel love-starved, absolutely. The next one.
And the last one would be gifts. And, you know, you could go to Dollarama and buy something at the dollar store. Now, probably a wedding ring or some nice jewelry or even a nice car might even be at the top of the scale, but it doesn't have to be about the gift as much as I'm thinking of you, I'm prioritizing you, and I'm going to give you something because you're on my mind.
Absolutely, and it's not the monetary value. I remember I had one of these funky shower hats that sort of smelled icky, and I wanted a new one, but I wasn't going to have any time to go buy one. And my husband went and purchased one, just a $6 item, but it may as well have been a diamond ring, because I felt, oh my gosh, you went out of your way to get me a gift that I needed in the moment.
I'm thinking about your needs.
I'm thinking about your needs.
It's like I'm attending to you.
Absolutely, I'm attending to you. I've thought, and it's the perfect gift because it's something that I want. You didn't just get something that you wanted. I have a funny story. Once this couple came over, and I said, well, what brings you here? The first question we ask, right?
Of course.
And she said, he doesn't love me. And he goes, what do you mean I don't love you? I work till 11. I get up at 6 a.m. when it snowed. I shovel the snow. I scrape the ice, warm up your car, make sure there's gas. Why do you think I do that? She says, yes, but you don't tell me. And he goes, and yeah, you keep telling me, but you don't show me. And immediately I realized hers was words of affirmation, and his was absolutely acts of service.
So it's like they're on a different plane almost.
Yes, and obviously both of them loved each other because they were trying very hard, but the other person just wasn't feeling it. At all. So let's talk about what are some of the things that we can do to be speaking the same language? Yeah,
certainly I think it's important to understand yourself, because if you don't understand yourself, then you're probably not going to be able to express your needs to your partner very well. And this has come from Dr. Gary Chapman, and he wrote the 5 love languages, and so he has this resource online, certainly. So our viewers tonight could go to the 5 Love Languages website and do the online inventory.
It's such a great quiz. I always encourage couples to do that. So sometimes they're surprised at their own love language. So you know what your love language is, you know what your partner's primary love language is, and sometimes they can have a second language that's very close to it, but then you're loving them in their language, because otherwise, literally, I like you use the word language, because otherwise it's literally, you might as well be speaking a different language and speaking loudly like this. Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so they can certainly do that. And then the other thing is Gary also has a book on the subject matter that teaches you how to love your partner in their love language.
Yes, and he's also written a book for teens as well, too, to understand your teenagers, because certainly our children understanding how they need love and give love is also can be very helpful.
Yeah, because otherwise you could be loving someone and they're just not appreciating it, just like my couple. What can you give us a snapshot of what that can look like? I shared an example. Do you have a quick bite?
Well, I think it's also an important point, Rebecca, to make that there's no right or wrong language, right?
I'm glad
and
you
we
said
don't want
that.
we don't want to make a judgment to say that gift giving is certainly inferior to words of affirmation. And I've seen many couples, they come in and when they begin to understand this is who I am and this is who you are, now let's work with it. Help me to understand who you are. Well. It works so much better.
And a good indicator is also the way somebody loves us is the way they want to be loved.
Yes,
so I always say to people, find that out, and if at the end of the day you do a gratitude exercise where you give each other 3 things that you're grateful for, hopefully some of them are about your partner, it just creates that opportunity to say, okay, what is my partner excited about? What are they grateful about? So that works really well too.
And you start to bloom like a flower, you know, when you water that flower, if it was shriveling up, now it becomes full and beautiful.
I like that analogy because, you know, it's funny. Sometimes people say, oh, it's a lot of work. But for anything to work, it takes work.
It does
when
take
it comes
work.
to our homes, our, you know, our hobbies, we invest so much time in it. But when it comes to our relationships, sometimes we don't make the same effort.
Yeah, you're right.
Another thing that I encourage my couples to do is an emotional check-in. So sort of at the end of the day, even before they do the gratitude exercise, how was your day? How are you feeling? How are you feeling about us? And it just kind of gives them a really good chance to be together. Speaking of that, we're talking about at the end of the day, maybe in the bedroom, so we'll be talking about that next. Yes. Now that you have the skinny on how to start loving your partner so they're feeling it, we'll move into rubbing them the right way. Stay tuned for Sex Languages right after break. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca, geared towards making your relationships more robust than you ever thought possible. In this episode, we're discussing loving and touching your partner in the way that's meaningful to them with marriage counselor and my esteemed colleague, Kevin Coupland. Kevin, while most people have heard of the love languages and possibly taken the quiz that we were talking about at one time or another, very few people have a clue around sex languages. Thankfully, my dear friend and world-famous author, Dr. Doug Weiss, who is known for his 30-day marriage makeover, has written a great book on the subject matter titled, what else? 5 Sex Languages.
There's a theme running here.
There's a theme running here, right? So why don't we let our audience in on what those languages are and what exactly do they mean? Do you want to take away the first one?
Sure, let me take the first one. Well, you know, this one seems rather predictable, fun.
And obvious.
And obvious, isn't it? Fun. Yeah, fun. Certainly when we have sex, it should be fun. And some people look for the adventure or the fun in it. And it has, if it's not fun, then it's not meaningful.
It's not meaningful to them. And these are the people who love spontaneity and they like different ways of doing things. So these people can even be risk takers because they want to have fun. They can be risk takers. So this can be the person who wants to, not suggesting you do this, you'll get busted, but maybe they want to be in the back seat of the car and there's this little risk of getting caught. But for them, that's just infusing
the extra thrill.
The extra thrill, the adrenaline that goes with it.
In the elevator.
Absolutely. You speak like a man who's been there. Desire. These are people who really need to be desired. They need to be craved. I want you. I have to have you. And they need to know that you crave them, and they can never get enough of it. So you could be sending them texts or sex or whatever throughout the day so that they really feel you crave them. So the foreplay begins. It can begin hours before you actually get into it.
It's a little bit of an ego boost and a primer.
Could be. And for somebody who is insecure, I think it's lovely to know that you desire me. A lot of women, they, after you've had a couple of kids, you're getting older, you start feeling invisible to the world. And if your partner turns around and says, I want you, I have to have you, it's like, okay, you're so there. And it begins the warm-up ahead of time, so those insecurities start to melt away.
The lead-up is important.
The next one.
Yeah, is pleasure. And that's for people that really need to feel that pleasure and feel that experience and just yearn for it. And again, there are people who love to expand their sexual repertoire, so they can be fairly adventurous. I'm glad I'm doing the next one because I have a really good example. It's patience. These are the people who just want you to take their time with them, like not rush them at all. Slowly lead up to it, tease, be gentle, but don't do it if you're going to let them down. And when you make love, they like to lay in each other's arms for hours afterwards, or at least for a really long time. They don't like the pump and dump. So the funny story I was going to tell. Like a crock pot.
Like a crock pot, there you go. So the funny story I was going to tell you was, with my husband, sometimes I'll say, okay, we have a couple of hours. Do you want to take some quality time, fool around? And he'd say, you're not going to sandwich me in between your clients? Absolutely not. And I'm thinking, well, it doesn't usually take more than maybe an hour. We still have an hour to spare. And then when I read the book, I realized that was the worst thing I could have said to him, because he wanted me to really take my time with him and not make him feel rushed or like, we're just doing it for the sake of doing it. So I think if we can really be cognizant of how our partner is appreciating their sexuality and what gets to them, it's awesome. Take away the final one.
And so the last one would be acceptance and celebration. And we need to be able to feel these people need to feel that they are loved, that they are cherished, that the environment is right.
So these people want all of them to make love to all of you. Like they want to be all in. This is a mind, body, soul experience for this person. So you can't just get to sex and, sex can begin hours before you, because you do want to show them, I accept all of you. I love all of you. I want all of you.
Sounds like a song I've heard recently.
Oh, really?
Yes, all of me wants all of you.
All of me wants all of you. Yes. Yeah, actually, you're right. I heard it on the radio just the other day. But that's the idea, that you want to feel accepted. And at the end of the day, I think sex language or not, we all have that need where we want to feel that our partner accepts us just the way we are. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about
isn't it beautiful
in
when we can be fully accepted by our partner, regardless of the flaws that we have? They can see past that to accept, and despite the flaws, yes, certainly to accept us and to love us and to want to be with us, certainly in a very sexual way as well, too.
Exactly. So now we've talked about, love languages and sex languages. So I just want to take a couple of minutes and talk about, bringing everything together. So your partner's love language, their sex language, and you're trying to love them in their language. How do you convey that you have maybe a different love language? Certainly, you can take Gary's love languages test, but what would be a safe way to convey to your partner that, this is what I need, this is what I want?
I think that having conversations when things are good is the first thing to do. You don't want to be having this conversation after you've just come off of a frustrating experience, or you're feeling hurt or your partner is feeling hurt. So have a situation, maybe go out for dinner and say, you know what, let's have a conversation about this. Let's talk about it. And what do you think your love languages are? What are your sex languages? These are mine. And now have the negotiation process take place in a really warm, comfortable environment.
So we've talked about 5 love languages, we've talked about 5 sex languages. I think it's apropos if you tell us what your acronym GREAT stands for, another 5 points that kind of ties everything together.
Yeah, it's to help us remember what it means to have a really great relationship. And so GREAT, and the first one would be giving. And we have to give ourselves, but when we give ourselves, we often receive in return, and we get gifts back in return, don't we?
And giving in the right love and sex language, of
Absolutely,
course.
giving in the right way. Yeah, and then romance. Romance is a key part of any relationship. And loving and sharing and expressing in that romantic way is going to keep those fires burning, isn't it?
And it elevates that relationship above all other relationships.
Yes, it certainly does. And then we have exciting. It has to be exciting. You've got to take time to go on road trips, do special things together. Those special things that only you do together that make your relationship unique from other relationships.
Absolutely. And if it's exciting outside the bedroom, then you're excited about doing things in the bedroom. Again, tying the love and the sex languages together.
And then the last one would be, the second last one is admiration. Showing your partner that you cherish them, that you admire them, that you like them. You know, sometimes couples can get into the trap of, yeah, I love you, but I don't show it. But this admiration is a process of constantly renewing and constantly re-showing your partner that you admire them, you care about them.
Absolutely. And Dr. Gottman, Dr. John Gottman, says that mutual admiration is one of the key ingredients to a healthy, happy relationship. And finally, you know, the last one is time. Make time for each other.
Yeah, if we don't put it in the calendar sometimes, it may not happen, right?
Yeah, so we have to make time. Kevin, I do hope that we've given our viewers some pretty hot ideas to connect. Coming up, the final scoop on loving your partner the right way, right after break. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca, a show where we bring you expert advice on important matters to help your relationships be more intimate, exciting, and emotionally fulfilling. We've been discussing love and sex languages with marriage counselor extraordinary Kevin Coupland. Kevin, while we know how we want to be loved, we often have a hard time communicating it to our partner. And when they don't read our mind, which we expect them to do, we get upset.
You mean they can't read our mind?
No.
Okay.
Imagine that, right?
Imagine that.
So before we wrap up, let's leave our viewers with our top 3 points each on healthy communication. Because, you know, sometimes people just say, oh, you got to learn to communicate. And some people have oral diarrhea. They're communicating, but they're not connecting. They're uncensored. There's no filter. They're just going at it. So let's just talk about communication a little bit, and then we can leave our audience with our top 3 points. What are some of the big things that you want to point out in communication to make it effective?
Yeah, first I'd say, Rebecca, that we should never assume that our partner understands us, or never assume that we understand our partner fully. And that's going to take a slowing down process, isn't it? And it's going to take a time to ask questions. Help me to understand. So I've heard a movie, Help Me, Help You. Well, that's what this is really about, is help me to understand what's going on with you. I think I understand just by your body language, by the way you're acting, by what you're looking, how you're looking at me, but maybe I'm not quite getting it correct. So help me to understand what are you feeling right now? What are you experiencing?
So there's definitely a willingness, and it's more about listening than it is even about just speaking, but really trying to hear each other out. Which brings me to one of the points that I wanted to make was, and this is basically listening to be influenced as opposed to trying to influence our partner. And I think of the Imago principles where you're reiterating what the person has said. So it may feel redundant, but if you say something to me and I have to respond respond by saying, so Kevin, I take it you feel such and such. Am I right? So you can say, yes, you're right. Or you can say, no, that's not what I meant. And we go back and forth until I get it. The part of the brain that's engaged in repeating back, like understanding and repeating and reiterating, is very different from the part that's engaged in just, getting defensive or just speaking your mind. Because here I'm trying to impress you, especially if you've said to me, honey, you don't listen.
Right.
I'm trying to impress you that I do listen. So in having to reiterate that, I think that makes a very strong case for getting, being able to say what you need to say and getting heard. Yeah, it's a good process. And then, of course, the tables turn, and then, it's my turn, and you do the same thing. But literally, it's a different part of the brain that's active at that point. So it's a great way of doing. You had a couple of other points.
Can I add also to that?
Absolutely.
The concept of attend, don't defend, where you actually slow down and you are listening and you're forcing yourself to hear what your partner's saying rather than getting caught in the trap of thinking about what I want to say in response to, or to rebut, or to defend my position.
Exactly. And again, it comes down to what John Gottman says about trying to be influenced. So it's like you've gone to hear the speaker, this amazing speaker talk. You bought your ticket, you've paid a lot of money, you're there, you're attending. You're there to learn. You're there to absorb everything, not to say, what you're saying is not right. And having that same kind of mindset, I think that's really critical.
Yeah, for sure.
So what other point would you like to raise along those lines?
I'd like to say also in follow-up to that really as a husband and as a dad, I need to personally, I look at it that I need to have my PhD in my wife and in my daughters.
I like that.
Yeah, in order to learn, I need to study and I need to gain understanding. And it's not so much about me defending my position as understanding what my wife is feeling and what she's experiencing and what my daughters are feeling and what they're experiencing as well too. And when I gain that PhD, when I take that approach that I just want to find out what's going on with you, how are you feeling about this experience, then it helps me to not be quite so emotional. And I find that helps certainly with clients when they can take a step back and say, help me to understand your position here.
The brain waves start to calm down.
Yeah, they really do.
I'd love to see the thesis on your PhD that explains what your wife is into. That would be lovely. Another thing that I tell couples is it's always better to ask for what you want as opposed to complain about what you didn't get. And this can be in the bedroom, it can be outside the bedroom, and particularly when people speak different love and sex languages, there can be a dissatisfaction. You can feel unloved. You can feel dissatisfied in the sack. And people will, after the fact, either they will let you know in a certain way using certain body language, but often people will complain, you never, you always.
You never, you always.
Even though we're supposed to say, I feel, and not go to those absolute terms where we're saying you never, you always. So it's important to be able to say, this is what I'd like, and of course doing it in a very gentle way, and talking about it, like you had said, not after there's been, after there's been arguments, so saying, honey, I would really like us to take our time when we're making love, or let's take a technology-free hour and really, take a walk after dinner, really get to know each other. Another thing that I suggest is think about the impact that your words have on your partner before you speak them. So why don't you comment on that?
Kindness is so important, isn't it? That we think about and we slow down and we consider, is this thought, what I'm communicating, is it kind? Is it really necessary? Is it going to be helpful? And if it meets that criteria, certainly go ahead and say it. But sometimes it's best, my mother used to say, if you haven't got something nice to say, then don't say it. Sometimes we need to bite our tongue, don't we?
We do. A lot of couples, what I find is that they have a really hard time being able to ask. So what I suggest often is, after even you've had a discussion where you felt unheard, because sometimes, people are, one party is a good salesperson, they can convince you that they're right, and you say, what? I didn't even I didn't even get to say what I wanted to say. So I always say, write it out in an email. Don't push send. Then go back sentence by sentence. What am I trying to do? Am I trying to vent? Am I trying to present my side? Am I trying to share my feelings? And anything that doesn't meet the agenda, you delete it. Then you go back sentence by sentence and you try to say, okay, how will my partner take it? And we do know how they will take each one of the sentences. You tweak them and then you sleep on it. And next day you reread it. And then if you want to send it, it's a really good way of doing it. I even end it with, you don't have to respond, honey. So I'm not sitting there saying, what do you have to say? But
so the onus isn't on them necessarily.
Exactly. And it's you've put it out there, they can process it, and then it's not like they're interrupting you, because that's something couples do a lot. One party will interrupt the other one constantly. So I think that's another way. If you have a real quick point, 15 seconds, a final point.
Well, it can be very discouraging when you feel like what you're hearing from your partner is a lot of nagging or a lot of criticism. And so certainly we want to be able to, I would add to that email possibly, is it encouraging or is it discouraging? Because you want to encourage change, positive change, not try to necessarily focus on the negative to discourage that.
Absolutely. So this is why you need to be certain of what your agenda is. Well, Kevin, I hope that, we've given people lots to think about. We have love languages and sex languages, and the idea is to speak to our partner in their love language and sex language, which is going to be a give and take. So you have to learn what you want, convey it in a healthy manner, and also be mindful of what they crave and what they want, and then delivering it to them. Well, thank you so much for your words of wisdom, and viewers for joining us tonight. Be sure to tune in again next week, and don't you forget to send us emails with those questions on any and everything to do with sex and relationships. I'm Rebecca Rosenblat, your host, wishing you happy, healthy, and passionate relationships. Until next time.